Since it's 6 o'clock and it's September 5th, this is the village board meeting and I will call the meeting to order. I'll do a roll call. Nyla Fry.
Here.
Trisha Brown.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge. Aaron Moran.
Here.
Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
And Robert McPherson.
Here. I'll move to appoint Trisha the
Beat me, I was gonna nominate you.
the chair.
I'll second. Trisha.
So we have a nomination to select a chairperson and I understand the nomination is Trisha. And we have a second. Joe, all those in favor?
Joe was.
Joe is the motion.
That was the motion. She was the second.
So Joe was the first, sorry.
Joe made a motion for Trisha,
Aaron seconded. Okay, thank you.
and I think, can we take other motions?
Well,
Here, people?
you have a motion in a second. So.
Okay,
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay.
I-
Abstentions?
Abstaining.
But what was the vote?
I was an aye.
Oh, okay. So 4 to 1.
And I would say,
Or
I
one,
just
one.
wasn't sure if I should say or not, but yeah,
You would also.
You can vote for yourself.
that's fine.
So 4 to 1 with one abstention.
Yep.
Motion passes. And the next. So then we'll go ahead and have Trisha.
Okay. Just gonna have to help me out, Carla.
I will.
Okay, thank you. So the next item of business is to discuss and take action on remote participation requests from President Runge on the at September 5th, 2023 Village Board meeting.
And I have a statement to read from Village President Runge.
Before you start, I have a question for Brian, actually.
Sure.
Are we considering this a suspension of the rules?
I think we do not currently have a policy that addresses hybrid meetings. The village board took this up. I think it was January of this year, didn't take any action on this. Doesn't prevent you from allowing kind of a one-off. Because there's nothing specifically in the rules that requires people to be present. I think the reason for that is because when the code was drafted, the concept of a virtual meeting didn't exist. So theoretically, under our code, if the village board wanted it, let me state this differently. If the village board wanted to allow virtual participation by its members, we would not need to change our code at all. You can do this by policy because there's nothing in the code that specifically prevents it. Now, the fact of the matter is this came before the board in January. So I think that the unwritten policy is no, you can't participate virtually, but that doesn't prevent you from taking up this agenda item. And then you have the ability to vote whichever way you want to vote on it, essentially.
Right, so it's not a suspension of the rules, though.
No, it would not that I'm aware of because we don't have a specific rule in our code that prohibits it.
Okay. Just making sure if it's debatable or not, that's all.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is debatable from the standpoint of the agenda item is debatable for you.
Right, but if it was a suspension of the rules, you can't debate suspending the rules, so we wouldn't want to have statements on either side.
I don't
That's
think
why-
it's there's nothing in our code that specifically prohibits it. Again, I will acknowledge that I think that's because when the code was
Within the
drafted,
80s.
we didn't
Yeah.
have this concept contemplated.
Thank you.
Are you okay with me reading the statement? Okay. So regarding my absence and request to fully participate, albeit via Zoom, my calendar at work has been cleared for all Monday board meetings and other regular nighttime obligations related to holding the office. Additionally, my employer allows me nearly infinitely flexibility in attending the village business during daytime when the village needs me to meet with different stakeholders. My state partners are also supportive of my role and do not schedule travel on any Monday nor on CDA Wednesdays. However, this week's board meeting is on a Tuesday and not on a regular Monday. It is a day that my employer and partners can reasonably expect me to be available. The meeting I am traveling to on Tuesday, September 5th is the late stage for a year-long project with the Lac de Flambeau Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. The meeting will end at 3 with departure at 3:30 to 4. Given the distance, I would not be able to safely make it back to Waunakee in time for Monday's meeting. Delaying the board meeting and starting later was not an option, as I need to be in Rice Lake at 8 a.m. on Wednesday for a meeting that part of an effort to prepare rural communities in northwestern Wisconsin to accept federal BEAD dollars. I am asking the board to be flexible and vote to allow my participation. It is not that I am choosing to exclude myself. It is that a recently passed policy is preventing my participation when it would otherwise be possible. Indeed, remote participation has been widely and effectively used by the village board until only a few months ago. As part of that vote, please consider that the in-person only for trustees policy is problematic. It uniquely singles out elected officials. Specifically, the policy that the board established earlier this year does not restrict citizens from participating fully in the board meeting via Zoom. Citizens are allowed the same degree of participation online as they are in person. It also does not restrict or prevent consultants or petitioners from participating via Zoom. We routinely have consultants, landowners, business owners, and other types of petitioners on Zoom with the same level of privilege they would be allowed from in-person participation. The policy only restricts those who are elected as trustees from excluding their sworn duties. Our constituents have a reasonable expectation that we be allowed to carry out our duties. They should expect the Board of Trustees to act in good faith and support one another's participation. There will be circumstances in which each of us is able to participate, but not in person. Necessary travel, work, emergencies, illness, caregiving duties will all conspire against each of us at some point. It is in the best interest of our residents that we are flexible in allowing all of the elected representatives to participate, even when they are not able to attend in person. Kristen Runge.
Thank you. Discussion?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say that I appreciate the length at which President Runge has gone to with work to make sure that she can attend most meetings. I appreciate that. But I feel that if we as a board make it so that we can attend through Zoom or whatever, that we are opening a Pandora's box. As far as I'm concerned, when I vote, I want to look into the people's faces who are here for the meeting. If I'm voting against something that they're here saying don't do or to do, I want to see their reaction and I want to look them in the eye when I make my decision and vote. And through Zoom, I can't possibly do that. I have to answer to someone, and that's why I do not want to open a Pandora's box. And when we can attend by Zoom and when we can't, who's going to be the gatekeeper for that? Who's going to approve that and decide, well, this case is frivolous and they can't attend by Zoom, but this case, it's okay if this person attends by Zoom. I just don't want to bring forth those, that subject. And I have a question for Brian. When we talked about this in January with the other board, it sounded as if this was something that you didn't want to deal with because of the legalities. Where does this stand legally?
Well, legally, you can, if the village board wants to, it can adopt a policy that would allow board members to participate virtually. An example that I would give is the city of Verona has in fact adopted a policy of that nature. I think what's notable is when the pandemic occurred, the Department of Justice, issued an opinion letter that basically said, look, we want you to try to do the best that you can under these circumstances. It's my belief that now that the pandemic's over, that while municipalities have the ability to have hybrid meetings where council members or board members or committee members participate virtually, you're going to have to make sure that you abide by all of the open meetings requirements. Now, it can be done. Verona's got a policy that's about 4 or 5 pages long, and it gets into the issues to make sure that all the open meetings requirements are satisfied. But I would say that to the extent a municipality does this, you're not going to be able to rely on what happened during the pandemic. You have to have it a little bit tighter, is what I would say.
Thank you.
Joe?
I was looking back at what the comments were, or at least what's in the minutes from the January meeting. And one thing in here, it says the guidance from the board was to keep the policy as it currently is. I don't believe we have a written policy, so realistically, it was more of a gut feeling. Is that accurate?
What I recall from the meeting is, I remember Chris looking at me, so Todd, what are you gonna do? And I think I said something along the lines of, well, obviously, I'm not going to bring a policy back to you at your next meeting to consider. So what the question was to the board then was, would you like to consider a policy on remote participation by elected officials? Which would have then caused Brian and I to do some work to craft a document that the board would have looked at a subsequent meeting. The consensus of the board was to not pursue that policy creation for consideration by the board at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm not aware of a written policy that we established during the pandemic, quite honestly. We just went into action mode under general guidance that we were familiar with from the state, and also instruction from Dane County Health on whether we could or couldn't meet, and we kind of made it work without necessarily a written policy to guide every step of the way. Is that for the others who were involved in that, does that sound well, like, yeah.
And just to add that, I did look into our records and I did not find a written policy on
Excellent.
record.
Thank you.
Other comments? Robert?
So I did go back and watch that January meeting as well, because I was curious to see what the former board had to say on this, and because I had asked Carla about a policy and she said there's no policy. So I said, all right, I better watch this. And I mean, it was pretty clear at the time with that board, which comprises about half of our current board, that they were against this, and for very solid reasons. Joe, I know you weren't at that meeting, so I won't hold you accountable to that one. But there's a few things that stick out to me on this. One is there is in our bylaws, it states very clearly that when a meeting, the meetings are on Mondays, and when it falls on a federal holiday, it's the next day after. So while I respect the statement that President Runge wrote, that's kind of a bit of a planning issue on her part, not to know that a Monday meeting on a federal holiday would be pushed to the next Tuesday. The other part of it, which I struggle with, is that there was a meeting last month in which 3 of us were not present, in which there ended up becoming a vote that ended a tie and ended up in being a whole affair at the last meeting, is the nicest way I can put it. And so I am a little disappointed that if this is something that we're supposed to be considering tonight, why weren't we discussing this before, when we knew that there were people that were going to be out on that night? I even drawing back from the January meeting, I remember a former trustee making a comment of, if somebody's got something up for a vote and they just happen to be on a vacation, they planned a year in advance and that's their night for their vote and they miss it. It's, maybe this is a policy we have for that, but ultimately no decision was made that night. So, I mean, that plus the fact that we're talking about taking an action that a whole policy was supposed to be crafted around that doesn't exist. I think I agree with Trustee Fry that we're going to set a precedent here and a slippery slope for future requests, because I could honestly see, and I don't say this jokingly, I could see if a trustee felt strongly about having their chance to vote on something be denied while they were not able to attend just because they didn't get 4 yes votes at a meeting to do it, that they could sue and say that this was some sort of disparate treatment for whatever reason. Don't call me on that, by the way. I'm not saying that anybody's actually going to do that, but I could see in a future board that'd be a problem. So if we want to take up a policy discussion, I think we should do it the right way and have it noticed and have a full discussion as a board. But I don't think we should be doing anything tonight that would be different from how we've been doing things.
No, I agree. Given what the board said in January, I'll just reiterate once again, there is a reason why the Speaker of the House of Representatives banned the proxy vote. Because when you're an elected official, you have a responsibility to face your constituents. And you know what? Labor Day is a federal holiday every year. It's not Juneteenth. It's not a new thing that was just, created a few years ago. And it would be setting a very dangerous and imprudent precedent to do it without a notice discussion in which the public can participate.
Karen?
Well, in January, I remember being just on the fence. I'm still torn. I think I can see very valid reasons why, in unique circumstances, it would be appropriate. I've seen in other bodies and places where there's been elected officials that have health issues or other circumstances that it's been a really great option to make being an elected official a little more accessible sometimes. And yeah, I think I understand and I appreciate Nyla's sentiment about, being here and being in person. And I think having experienced both being fully virtual and then I guess our discussion and even just this new having a lot more of the consultants and our citizens on hybrid, I think we're getting more comfortable with that. So I doesn't sound like we're super ready for that, but I just think that we should be open to where there are times it's appropriate. I think that's on you as you're elected. If someone is routinely not here and suddenly hybrid for 6 months and you have no explanation, like that's different than things that are out of control. So yeah, I guess I'm not totally sure, but I think having more of an idea, I don't think it would be the worst thing for us to try it once in a while and see.
Thanks, Erin. I have to say, I feel for Kristen, while we all know it was a federal holiday, she did have her Mondays cleared. Her employer work, they may not have taken that into consideration with the calendar, and it's just whatever it is, it is. But also being someone who all of a sudden has to travel suddenly for work, I empathize with having to be out of town in a last minute. We can plan our vacations and have shortened vacations and tried to do everything from a personal, whether it's a long lead advance. But there are just some times where all of a sudden you just have to go deal with a project or deal with an issue and takes you away, and to also have to then sacrifice your role here if there's an option to be virtual and still participate and do all of the work leading up to it. I think it's definitely worth a discussion. I think Erin, you make a good point where obviously if it's a perpetual thing, but I think under extenuating circumstances, there should be some consideration for it. And I also, I wasn't part of that conversation in January, being new to the board, but I think at that time I too would have just even understood like having a hard and fast rule against it. I don't know if that's necessarily the best answer either. Be sure.
I would just like to say that I feel that we need a policy before we allow this to happen. Otherwise, we could be opening a Pandora's box that we don't need to open. And to have a policy before we begin doing something is the usual process and that we work. So that's just where I'm.
In light of the discussion that's gone on here, I think it would not be unreasonable to ask staff to come back with at least an initial proposal at a future meeting that we can bounce around. Is that?
And I just want to be clear that I'm not trying to advocate which way you're going to vote here, but I do think that you have, if you were to vote, you can vote in favor of allowing it and then having a policy come back later.
Mhm.
I would say now, if the thought process is, I don't want to approve this until we have a policy, that's perfectly legitimate too. The only thing I would say is if you do approve it, we definitely need to bring a policy forward to kind of go along with what Joe was saying.
Are we open to can Kristen, President Runge, like be here but not voting virtually?
Well,
There's still discussion.
I would say no. I mean, if you're present, then you participate fully. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, any village board member has the ability to watch,
Yeah.
But not participate.
Okay.
And honestly, that was my situation, I think 2 meetings ago. I had a work thing come up at the last minute and couldn't physically be here, but was able to watch. So did so.
Which is Kristen's current status, by the way. She is watching as an attendee.
So it's, I don't want to cut off the discussion, but at some point in time, someone's either going to have to vote in favor or against, and then that's how you'll proceed because it is an action item.
it feels like the direction that we're moving is towards just revisiting the conversation and talking about a policy. And I mean, I would make a motion to allow Kristen to participate and direct staff to develop a policy to bring back to the board for consideration at a future date.
I'll second.
You still
I'm
have a lot for further discussion,
Oh,
even though there's
yeah.
been a motion.
Question, isn't this kind of like two different motions?
Well, I mean, I think it's the way that it was phrased is consistent with what I believe I said. I mean, if you're going to approve this, it has to be a one-off and you have to have a policy come back. Again, you don't have to vote that way, but I do agree, Nyla, with what you said. You can't just do this on a piecemeal basis. So it's either no, and I want a policy to come back, or yes, and I want a policy to come back, or no, and I don't want to think about it anymore. I mean, those are kind of the three options, I think.
But that's two separate motions then, because someone may want to vote no tonight, but they want to have a policy come back. And she bundled it into one motion. So that's why
Okay.
that's what Nyla's asking.
Well, I guess what I would say is you can vote against this and then make a subsequent motion to say, okay, notwithstanding the fact that I voted against it, maybe for the reason that you said, Nyla. In other words, I want to see a policy adopted first. But just because this motion, if you were to oppose this motion, it doesn't prevent you from making another motion to your effect.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion that's on the table? No, with that being done, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Nay.
No,
Okay, there'll be a tie.
Okay, so a tie means that it does not
Okay.
pass. Now, that still doesn't prevent someone, if they want to right now, to make a motion on whether or not you want a policy to come back.
I'll motion to direct staff to create a policy for remote trustee participation.
I will second.
No.
Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 And I would expect that we could reasonably have a version ready for you at your next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business, confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 9/1. The final agenda was published was posted in all three official posting locations on 8/31. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 8/31. Just two important requests for the audience is to please be sure you sign in with your name, your address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment, please be sure you fill out the form and hand it to me prior to that agenda item.
Thank you. And with that, do we have any public comment?
We do have one. Dennis Helt at 214 K Drive, Waunakee.
Okay. The last meeting I came here and talked against the Tierney district, and I just thought I'd better come and be consistent and say that I sent you all emails today. Maybe you have had a chance, maybe you haven't to read it, but I would invite you to read it at your village email address. But basically, I said I was going to ask some questions, and I'm not making accusations. I'm just saying, why did this Welch company buy this land before they even knew if they could afford to build on it? That's a question they can answer to you on that. And it only show one bank that they said could only fund this if they got a TIF. And I was wondering, there's several banks in this area. There's many. Fortunately, there are. Why not make them get 5 or 6 banks and say they all agree on that front before you even discuss it? And then this payback scheme of, from what I could see, you wouldn't get your money back in full until 2055. That's the present value of that money is not very high, I don't think. But so I guess my final point is that I'm not a fan of TIFs in general. I think we use them too much, and they many companies can do this on their own. It's just for dilapidated areas that would not get it otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Carla, was there another public comment?
There is. We have Robert Proctor at 2 East Milford Street, number 200, Madison.
Good evening, Robert Proctor. I represent Welch regarding the TIF request. A couple of points just like to make is first, we're here tonight for a discussion on a proposed developer agreement to get feedback from the board, not on a vote on the amending the TIF district or adopting anything. One point I wanted to make clear in response to the comment and some that this agreement that's being proposed by Welch is out of the ordinary to the benefit of both the taxing entities and to the village. As you all know, in almost every TIF agreement, I bet you in every TIF agreement that the village has done, it doesn't get the money back. It's not a loan. The TIF incentive is paid to the developer or to however it's going to be done, and that increment is to the developer, and that you get your share of the increment, but the developer. So all of the other entities that have received TIF payments in the past year have received their payments and they've kept them, used them for whatever, to pay off their infrastructure, to pay off their financing, whatever the deal was. This is the first time in my career, and I've done dozens and dozens of TIFs, that I've ever seen a system put in place where the recipient was actually going to pay the money back. And the huge part for the taxing authorities, like the school district, in this case, is that this is money now that the school district actually gets. So you all know how TIF works. You create your TIF district, the increments created, that money that gets spent by the village is money that would have otherwise gone to the school district, to the technical college, to the county, and so forth. And they never see that money. But in this case, what happens is the money goes initially to the Welch so that they can complete their financing and do their project. Then after they get through that period, they pay the money back, which means that money then that the school district would have never got, that the technical college would have never got, that the county never would have got, their share of the money is going to go to them. You're also going to get the money back that you generally would not get back in a TIF. So this is really a loan, unlike most of in all of the incentives I believe you've done in the past. I'm sure the city attorney or the village attorney could speak to your past, but I've never seen one that's been paid back. So this is definitely needed as a but-for the project. The project's not going to happen but for the TIF. And if the project doesn't happen, that tax increment will not be created. And that tax increment will then also not just be created, all of it's going to go to the taxing authorities. Unlike in most TIFs, where during the life of the TIF, when you're paying it out, that TIF goes to the developer only. It's just a matter of timing now. So we would like to get comments back on the development agreement, and especially what I consider a really unique and positive provision in it, where the village is actually going to get the money back. Thank you.
And one note, just in terms of process for speakers, Attorney Proctor is representing the person who made application, which is included in your agenda. It's not uncommon. In fact, it's typical for the board to engage the applicant in further discussion during that item on the agenda. So if you want more information or wish for other details from either Attorney Proctor or his client, you're certainly welcome to do that during that item on the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Carla, any additional or online?
I have no further forms.
Okay, with that, we move.
And President Runge does not have her hand up.
Okay. So with that, we move to the consent agenda. Are there any items that our village board members would want to pull or discuss, or was there a motion to approve?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Got a motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Okay. Next item, presentations by the WNC Executive Director, Christina Maher. Thank you. Could you, I'm glad you said that, I would have said mayor.
I'm gonna do a share screen.
No worries. Glad you guys all have survived the heat wave from the weekend. We'll get set up with tech and hopefully it will work quirk free here.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first? I don't think, have you been to a board meeting yet, Christina?
I have not.
Burns?
Yeah, so I'm Christina Maher. As mentioned, I'm the newer executive director at Waunakee Neighborhood Connection. I am a Waunakee resident, have been for about 10 years with my husband, Trent Maher. We stay pretty busy in the community. My husband's coaching 7th grade football right now, and I've been coaching the middle school dance team since its inception in 2019. So yeah, we keep pretty busy. You might see us walking our fur child. We have a Greyhound Husky mix around town quite a bit. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Should be popping up to presentation mode in just a second here.
Sounds good.
There
I'll
we go.
kind of just get started for the sake of saving y'all some time here. So sometimes people are surprised to hear that there are neighbors in the Waunakee School District that are experiencing financial insecurity. This might mean they're unable to pay all their bills, or maybe they're living paycheck to paycheck, living with friends or family, or even homeless. Waunakee Neighborhood Connection encourages neighbors helping neighbors that are facing financial insecurity. And we currently do have clients going through a wide range of these examples that I shared. Some only need help for a short period of time, while others might need help for more long-term. Most of us have heard of the federal poverty level, which is an income amount that the government defines. But there's a gap between that poverty level and the amount it actually takes to pay all your bills. So the essential cost of living. And there is a gap. So that gap is known as the ALICE threshold, and that's an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. In other words, the working poor. So again, we've got the federal poverty level that you guys are probably familiar with hearing, but that number is so low. So the cost to actually pay for your rent or your housing, your childcare, your transportation, your medical insurance, your bills, cost of living, food, all that fun stuff is going to be much higher. And while the Waunakee area has a very low poverty rate, the percentage of our neighbors in the area living at or below that ALICE threshold ranges from 17 to 22%. We acknowledge that these 2021 numbers, they are collected through the Census Bureau. And so with that, we are kind of guessing that these numbers are lower than what is actually happening out there. They're probably not catching folks that live on agricultural housing at the farms. They're probably not catching folks that have multiple households living under one roof. Sorry, working on my clicks. They're probably not capturing folks that don't speak English as their first language. And seeing that we've had the pandemic, we've had inflation, we've seen an increasing number of registered clients at Waunakee Neighborhood Connection. These things make us think that the numbers that we're seeing from that 2021 study are probably higher than what they are sharing. And I know there's a delay, Todd, but I'm struggling with the clicks. Okay. So there's kind of a breakdown. That direction.
That's where it'll catch it.
Thank you. Awesome. So again, here's kind of the breakdown from 2021 numbers. As of July 31st, Waunakee Neighborhood Connection is serving 396 households comprised of 1,400 individuals. This is a 17% increase over the last year and a 171% increase since 3 years ago. So July 2020 till now, we've seen a huge increase in clients in need of services. And it's why having Waunakee Neighborhood Connection in town, having the Waunakee Food Pantry in town is so important. Here are a few highlights of the programs and services that Waunakee Neighborhood Connection provides for members of the community. Our biggest program is a community store. Basically, clients are able to come in and shop for things like household goods and clothing and games and toys for their children, cleaning supplies, paper products, toiletries, all these items which are donated by community members and are free for clients. This helps them offset their monthly budget. We have a neighbor to neighbor program, which allows for short-term financial assistance if folks have something unexpected come up, like a medical bill, car repair, things of that nature. We also have a diaper program, which allows those that need it to have 100 diapers per month and wipes for their children. We have a relationship with the Madison Diaper Bank for that. As you know, diapers are very expensive, so this is a wonderful benefit to provide. We have a Build-A-Bed program, which is a partnership with Waunakee Furniture, ETC, and we're able to provide beds and bedding for folks that might otherwise be sleeping on the floor, air mattress, or doubled up. We have an English group, which serves our neighbors for whom English is not their first language. It helps them make connections and helps them work on their conversational skills. But this year, we're really excited to be bringing in the Madison Literacy Network to offer a more formal English class. And that will be an opportunity for folks where English isn't their first language to test in and out and have more formal instruction for learning English. The Waunakee Public Library, by the way, is also partnering with us on that, which is wonderful. We have Holiday Wishes, which is a program that ensures that our clients receive gifts for the winter holidays. And we also have case managers on site that help with identifying needs of our clients and then referring out to additional resources that might help them out. As you guys know, we are moving to the former Waunakee Library building this fall, and we are very grateful to the Village of Waunakee for supporting our move. From the generous lease terms provided, packaging our remodel work with the village's work to create a larger project to bid, agreeing to collect our remodel costs after the sale of our building, and more, we really appreciate your partnership and support. The community is really excited that we'll be sharing a location with the food pantry, and we'll be doing a lot of collaboration with them. Already, we've decided we'll be changing our Saturday hours to match up so that accessibility will increase. We have a plan to make registration for both organizations more transferable. We're discussing deferring our holiday meal program to the food pantry and also discussing avoiding some deduplication of non-food items. So obviously, we're pretty pumped about this collaboration with the food pantry and increasing that accessibility for our clients. Wanted to show you some pictures of, go backwards one, of what's happening inside here. So this new space is going to allow for some additional opportunities for our organization. We'll be able to offer hoteling space to host staff from partner agencies in Madison and the surrounding areas. That will be wonderful so that clients can meet with folks that they might otherwise not be able to get transportation out to meet with attorneys or other resources. We'll have an after hours donation drop-off area, which we don't have currently. We'll have a dressing room for clients to try on clothes, a laundry room, and more. We're also hoping to take advantage of all the high schoolers that are sitting just across the parking lot because we have lots of volunteer opportunities. So here, just want to go through some quick pictures. Demolition started in July, and I know there were a couple hiccups, as there usually is with construction, but things are back on track, and we're supposed to get an updated construction timeline, but the hope is that we will be moving before our closing date of November 1st. And if you've ever been in the old library, I'm sure this is interesting to see it kind of transform here.
Doesn't seem like, just let me know when you want to proceed now.
Sure, it's kind of struggling. Let's see if it goes, yeah. Awesome, yeah. So we've got a lot of framing in right now. It's very exciting. So as I've shared, the needs in our community have been growing significantly, and moving to a new building is no small feat. We are currently looking to the community for support for our next chapter campaign. Our goal is to raise $200,000 by October 15th to fund vital operational needs. And we've got a kind of a fun incentive in place. The Meester family, who are local here in town, their Meester Family Foundation is offering a challenge to the community. They're going to match 50 cents of every dollar raised during this Our Next Chapter campaign up to $25,000. So very excited. You'll see lots of that in the media and on our social media and just out in the community as we start advertising this push and this excitement about our upcoming move here. Some current events going on at Waunakee Neighborhood Connection. We have a community-wide coat drive going on right now through the end of the month. There are a few local businesses in town that are collecting gently used coats for adults and children. So please, if you have anything that you can part with, keep that in mind. We also have an upcoming 5K and 1 mile run walk. It's family friendly. It's not timed or anything, so it's not too intense. It's called the Great Pumpkin Smash Dash. The smash part of it is we'll be throwing pumpkins off of the Lone Girl rooftop into a target down below for a chance to win prizes. There's also a costume contest and fun things taking place before and after the race. So again, keep your eyes out for advertisement and register if you're interested. Other than that, I just want to say thank you guys for being so invested in your community and learning more about Waunakee Neighborhood Connection today. Our mission definitely relies on neighbors helping neighbors, and we're just grateful that we have a village board here that wants to do just that. So any questions about our organization or what we're up to?
Any questions or comments by the board?
I'd just like to say thank you for the work that you're doing, and I'm very glad to hear that you're working with the food pantry. That'll be a great service for those who need the services.
Yeah,
And thank you and good luck with your fund drive.
thank you. All right.
For sure.
Another-
One note, you might have just caught it in passing, but Christina mentioned that they have a closing. They did successfully come to agreement on terms for sale of their current building.
Yes.
And I don't know if that, the details are public yet,
It
but they
is.
are happy to have been successful with that sale.
Yeah, it is. I can share who the purchaser is. So Katie Leah Agency, the AmFam agency, will be moving from their Division Street location or to ours.
Wonderful.
And I've heard rumor that the pumpkin target is my car going down Main Street. So I hope everybody enjoys that.
Christina, thank you so much. The Neighborhood Connection is a great asset for the community. Okay, next on the agenda, I believe, is community reports, but I lost my agenda. Yes, okay, Finance Committee. Joe, is that one yours?
Sure, actually, 1 and 2 are both mine.
Okay,
Finance Committee met actually before the last village board meeting. And we talked about the associated appraisal stuff, which the board then approved, and deferred discussion around the additional fund balance policy actually back to the village board. So that'll be something coming to us at some point in the future. Moving on to the Utilities Commission, we met about a week ago, maybe it was the 28th. Yeah, so it was a week ago. All the days blend together these times. There were a couple of different things that we discussed, most notably the outages at the, there was one at the end of July, 3 at the end of August. Those are definitely pain points. There was a couple of different reasons. There were some storms, there was a squirrel that took out some things, some bad hardware pieces. So a lot of different things going on. They are very aware of the concerns and the pain that comes from losing power. So they're not thrilled with those and certainly don't want to continue that kind of a pace, but the things that have been found have been repaired. So that's a good thing.
okay, awesome.
Second item would be on August 23rd. The peak energy usage was 12% higher than the previous record for Waunakee. So that was a very significant day. And the third one is well 5, which I believe is on Madison Street. There was an approval to engage for preliminary engineering services for water storage at that location.
Thanks, Joe. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the squirrels are much more aggressive this year than in the past.
A lot more.
Robert, are you on the fire district taking that one?
Yeah.
Or,
All right.
no, that's right.
Nyla always makes me present.
can't see Nyla.
She's the vice chair. She gets to tell me what to do over there. It was actually a pretty brief meeting. They're continuing to do work on Squad 5 and Car 2. They will anticipate both of those will be finished by the end of the year. They're just waiting on some final parts and work done on them. And then we did the first presentation of the RFP. Unfortunately, we were missing a member that night, so we agreed to delay it until or in September, this month's meeting, so that the full commission can take a look at the RFP before referring it back to this village board for our first meeting in October.
Okay, that wraps up, unless there's any other committees or boards. Okay, on to business items. Update on village hall remodel process.
Yeah, a lot's been happening, and starting, is it next Monday, team? The entire Village Hall staff team is going to relocate to the lower level of Village Hall, which is also where we will coordinate our reception activities for the public. So fortunately, we have a working elevator and a stairway. So from this door forward, essentially, demolition will begin. Now, when this room is needed for board meetings, other meetings, conferences, what have you, the contractors will provide access to this room. So we'll continue to our activities here as we have, but from there back, it's going to be quite a mess for, what was their estimated?
2.5 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, early December, we're expecting completion. The team has done a really good job. Staff and departments have been meeting to figure out how to best continue to serve during the course of the disruption. We have assigned areas in the lower level. The two conferences are being used down there by multiple departments, and then the lower level in the back is being divided up into some workstations for staff. We may have some scenarios where staff will most effectively be working remote. I'll be, allowing that so staff can be most productive. Sometimes it's just the noise that'll be the factor. Other times it's the need for privacy and conversations that perhaps can't be accommodated in this building during that period. So we may have times where staff will be working remote because of those scenarios. But it'll be kicking off in earnest. We've had a good go in coming up with solutions to help us. You see the big library carts by the desk spaces. Everybody's essentially putting their desks on wheels, taking it down, and they'll be putting it next to their tables downstairs for their work area downstairs. Telephones should not be disrupted. We're working on those arrangements as well, including our main switchboard phone. Things should continue to work as is, along with emails. So you will definitely see activity here starting next week.
Awesome. And
If anybody notes hiccups or, hears from public who have had challenges engaging with staff, please let us know right away so we can work to correct those.
Okay, thanks, Todd. And we won't have to wear hard hats during meetings.
Unless you want to meet out there.
Thank you for the, Joe.
Well, just one question. Will there be any impact to parking, maybe during the day?
Not that I know of. As we heard.
Okay.
Yeah, the contractor access will be from the side door, not the front door.
Okay.
So we should be okay for the most part.
Right.
Okay, good question. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Discuss and take action, Friends of Schumacher Farm Park funding request for for antique machinery.
I'll be sharing my screen again here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Pelton, president of Friends of Schumacher Farm, and with me is Rebecca Russell. And we are 2 of 5 board members. We run the program, Friends of Schumacher Farm, programs and events at the park. And thank you for having us back and letting us give you an update on our project, which we're very excited about. Our purpose here tonight is to give you an update on construction, give you an update on funding, but also to address a couple of issues that we heard when we were here last in June, when we first introduced the project, that of county support and funding sources. So I'll go to the next slide if this works. Oops, there we go. So construction began in July and we're making steady progress. These pictures were taken about a week ago, so they're a little outdated. Since then, we've one of the doors is on, the big doors on the end, the sliding doors that you actually can't see here, have been installed. They're working right now on a sidewalk that goes across the front of the lean-to. The lean-to, as a reminder, is going to be an area where we can display equipment and also do demonstrations out there. Siding was delivered this week. That'll go up. So it's moving quickly and we hope to be done by end September, early October. Rebecca.
So the need for why we are building the Center for Antique Machinery, this will help fulfill our mission and Marcella Schumacher's vision when she donated the land to provide visitors with a fuller understanding of what it was like to live here in Dane County 100 years ago during the 1920s, 1930s Depression era. So much of what we do at Schumacher Farm is to help new people to our community and people who have lived here for generations to understand what makes Waunakee so special. This is a very unique community. As someone who moved here about 5 years ago, one of the things I love the most is how Waunakee is different than any of the other suburbs of Madison. It has this wonderful tie still to agriculture, and it also is so community focused. And I think that Schumacher Farm is one of those places that really emphasizes both of those assets. The Center for Antique Machinery is going to do a lot more than store machinery. One of the things that we'll do is educate the public on a lot of the agricultural techniques and agricultural pieces that were prevalent and well-known 100 years ago. We have quite a few pieces of rare antique machinery that were donated to the farm, and they have been held in storage all over Sauk County and all over Dane County because there is no room currently at the farm. And the pieces are so rare that we're actually unable to take them safely to the farm. Transporting them would be dangerous for other cars that are trying to get by, or dangerous for the machinery pieces if they were to fall apart being transported that far. So right now we have a lot of machinery pieces that are not being used for educational demonstrations or workshops or shown at all, which is really a waste of these wonderful resources that have been made available to the farm. So by having them here, we'll have everything in one place with room to grow our collections if other donations were to come in. And the lean-to, which was shown in the picture before, thank you. This will all have a walkway that comes up to it that's wheelchair accessible, and it will have exhibits, and we'll change out the exhibits on a seasonal basis. So you'll have the harvesting equipment with signage that explains what it was like to do harvesting on a farm 100 years ago. You would have the planting season, and then that would change out throughout the seasons so that you would have different, almost like a little museum there with educational materials. And then in addition to that, we would be able to take out pieces easily through those sliding double doors in order to do demonstrations and workshops, and open up new types of agricultural educational opportunities. One of the things on the farm right now is that we're very limited to having all of our field trips from the Waunakee School District or other neighboring school districts. Our programs with the village center, everything has to be in the Center for Rural History, which is the new building that you helped contribute to. And that's a wonderful space, but it's also high in demand. So if there's birthday parties or weddings or baby showers, we can't use that space for educational programs on those days. And by having this new space, we'll open up a lot of new areas around the farm, which are currently being used for storage, that would be better suited as spaces for educational programs. We've had a lot of demand to increase our educational programs. Right now, we're serving about 600 kids a year with mainly free educational programs about the environment, about agriculture, about prairies, about ecology. And some of those programs are in the north side of Madison with the community centers. We've been partnering more with the Waunakee Village Center, with the Waunakee Food Pantry, and we're trying to continue to increase our reach. But again, we're limited by indoor spaces in case of rain or during the winter to warm up. So this will open up new opportunities for that as well. Go ahead. Thank you. And then lastly, I just want to mention that Waunakee obviously is growing in terms of number of people in the area. Many of you in the room probably have some tie to agriculture, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or yourself. But for us folks that are a little bit newer to the area, it's all new, and it's been very exciting to introduce families who are also newer to the area, who maybe came from more urban areas like myself, to what makes Waunakee special and what it means to grow food and have an agricultural background and the work that goes into it. And it can be really inspiring for children and families to learn what makes this area so unique and why agriculture is such an important part of what Waunakee is. So I think that the community events will really become even more special to this area and bring even more people in as we continue to grow. Go to the fundraising, Mark. Thanks. Okay, so the total cost for this project is $338,000. And as of August 28th, we have $289,000 that have been brought in. So we are at $49,000 remaining. That's 86% of the way. Some of the community contributions that we've received are seen here on the left, including several in-kind donations and then several from Waunakee and other area foundations and companies. And then for individual contributions, like most campaigns, you can see that the most contributions are the smaller ones, and then we've had several significant donors that have stepped up as well. I will add that this is all on top of our membership and our general operating that we needed to raise this year to put on all of our normal programs. Because while Dane County does contribute greatly and we have a wonderful partnership with them, their role is more things like the lawn mowing, the maintenance, and our role as the Friends Group are putting on the community events that are free, doing all the environmental education programming, doing the prairie restoration, all the things that are on top of maintaining the land comes down to the Friends Group. So we've had to continue to raise money for that on top of the new building as well. I would like to briefly discuss the county unless we have any questions so far.
Any questions of the board? At this
Okay.
point?
Sort of a quick random one. What's the depth of that lean-to? I'm sure it was on the plan.
It's 14 by 80.
Oh, okay.
And it's lit, there's lights, so it'll be, you can go at any time, even in the winter when it's dark at 4. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And there'll be cupolas on top there lit up, so you'll be able to, enjoy seeing it as you drive past.
Than I expected. It didn't look that deep in the pictures. But
Mhm.
good
So
to hear
the
that.
building, the structure, the storage area itself is 60 by 80.
Okay.
So it's a good sized building.
Mhm.
Plenty of room.
Excellent.
So county, this was brought up at the last meeting as a concern. We are aware that the county is not providing financial support to this project. This is an unusual circumstance for a capital project on county land. Historically, the county would run any capital projects and be completely in charge of it. And this is the first time that the county has decided to try a new method where they will tell the Friends Groups that they can run the project themselves. And the benefit of that is that there is a lot less, the process has been a lot smoother and a lot faster, and we're able to pick the materials and the design that actually do work best for the equipment that we are trying to put into the facility, along with having like the lean-to that likely would have been cut if we went through something like a government process, just because we would have had to make it as financially efficient as possible. So there are definitely some benefits to this new process. We also wanted to emphasize that while the county cannot provide financial support to this without becoming the ones that lead the process, they have been extremely supportive in general. They have been helping us with making the right connections, with doing the design, with getting through all the different governmental permits and approvals. And they also have put in a significant financial contribution in several other areas of the farm in the last few years. They replaced the roof recently on the Center for Rural History. They have pledged support to redo the porch to make it ADA accessible and to make it more historically accurate on Marcella Schumacher's house. They have provided support for many of our programs and events, and they continue to provide resources and support for our volunteer groups and for our prairie restoration. So we are aware that there's not that financial aspect, but we, as you can see, have been raising a significant portion from many dedicated community members and organizations. And we hope that the village will also consider partnering with us on this, as you have been so supportive of Schumacher Farm in the past. And as the community continues to grow, we think this will be an even more important, beautiful asset for our community to gather. And we would respectfully ask you to consider a gift of $15,000 to support this project. We understand that that money might not be readily available, but we would like if you would consider looking into whether or not that could be available by, Todd, I believe you said looking into various areas that we might be able to find funding.
Yeah, Renee's prepared to offer some options to the village board when you're done with the
Wonderful.
presentation.
Thank you.
Any questions before we have Renee give us an overview of some of those options might be?
Just quick question, because I think I asked about county support
Yeah.
last time. So thank you for answering on that, because that was very helpful to know. Are we the only municipality that you're asking for money for this, or have you spoken with Westport, Springfield, the rest of them to see if they were interested?
I can take that one. So we did go before Westport and they. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We did go before Westport and they donated $1,000.
Thank you.
Again, I think their concern was the support from Dane County
Any other questions before? I have one. Do we have the same obligation that Dane County has when contributing to a project in this way?
Not if your contribution is under $25,000.
Okay, thank you. So Renee, do you want to just maybe highlight some options that we might have to consider?
So I looked, Todd and I talked about it a little bit. There's no real logical place that jumps out. I mean, it obviously was not in our budget. So far, it's not in any future budget as well. But we do have, as we kind of talked about it at finance, we are in excess of our policy for holding fund balance, unassigned fund balance. So our policy is between 20 and 25% of our next year's expenditure budget. At the end of 2022, we were at just under 28%. So about 3% over our high end of our policy. That equates to about 320,000 or so. That could potentially be a source, again, using some of the unassigned fund balance. We do have still a balance in our ARPA funding. We have still about 150,000 that has not been earmarked for any other project. So those would be potential sources.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nyla.
Can those funds be used for something like this?
Right. We have the full discretion to use ARPA for whatever we want.
Okay, thank you.
Because of the amount of money that we received.
Questions of the board?
ARPA expires when?
So we have to have it spent or formally committed, like a contract in place by the end of 2024.
Thank you.
And then it has to be fully dispersed by the end of 2026.
Todd, can you just talk maybe of some precedents in requests like this or similar past actions?
Well, with the farm itself,
Similar in nature.
yeah, well, specifically for the farm we gave, I think it was $35,000, and we split it.
I looked today, I do believe it was around 35,000 that we
35.
gave.
We split it over 3 budget years, I believe,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
something like
It was
that.
definitely at least 2-year installments, maybe 3 years.
Yeah, obviously a more substantial project, of course. Help me out, Renee, with other organizations. We did contribute and support WNC towards their the fund to support families. I'm blanking on the name of it, but we did use ARPA funds
For the neighbor to neighbor.
to supply neighbor to the neighbor funding. I think that was about 60,000.
60,000. We also gave the Waunakee Neighborhood Connection or
The food pantry.
the food pantry, sorry. Some funds they had requested, I believe theirs was 19,000 that we gave using ARPA funds, which they have fully expended. The Waunakee Neighborhood Connection is still using up some of the funding, but they have that another 1.5 years or so.
There are some other groups that we contribute to on a regular basis that are nonprofit, but not as local as Schumacher Farm, like the Clean Lakes Alliance. And there may be a couple of others that we have an ongoing contribution to.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Go ahead, Erin.
Thank you for presenting, and the building looks great. I was just up there, and it's really exciting to know that a lot of this equipment can be used, and we are very lucky to have Schumacher in Westport, but such an asset to our Waunakee community. I would love for us to be able to contribute to this too, because I think it's great, and I'm thankful for your vision to create the space for all those opportunities. When I do have a recommendation, if we should use ARPA's or the general fund.
I do not really have a
Okay.
recommendation. We were just looking for
Okay.
some potential.
Yeah.
Because, we don't have the community betterment, which comes from the room tax. I mean, we're really depleting that. We don't have enough in there. That would be another potential source, but we just don't have much for funds until we start getting some room tax again.
I would urge us either way to find.
Erin, is that a motion?
I'll make a motion. Brian, should I not make a
So-
motion?
I
More
don't
discussion?
have my- I mean, it is a discussion and action item, so you can if you want to tonight. I mean, if you want to, it could be move to make a $15,000 donation to the Friends of Schumacher Farm Park for the Center for Antique Machinery, with the $15,000 coming from the ARPA funds.
No, I don't want to second it. I want a conversation.
Well, I don't think there's
Okay.
actually even been a
Yeah,
motion
Yeah,
yet.
no, I haven't made a motion yet, so go ahead.
And I'm not even sure if that's what you want. That's just based on the discussion to this point. If
Tyler, go ahead.
Okay, instead of using the ARPA funds, because I think perhaps there are other uses for those funds, I would rather have it come from the unassigned fund balance. I feel it's a great project. I grew up in a very rural area, and I go back there a lot, and I see where unfortunately that way of life is disappearing and that a lot of the history is disappearing. So I'm glad to see that there's a group in Waunakee who is trying to have a museum and educate people as to what rural life was about. I think it's important, but I would rather see it come from the unassigned fund balance, because I just feel that because ARPA funds came because of the pandemic, that the ARPA funds should be used in a different way.
Any other discussion?
I guess I'm fine with giving them the 15 grand. In terms of which source we use, I would also counter that, ARPA, it is expiring and it's more restricted than what you can use when it comes to the general fund balance. We could use the general fund balance as an example for putting more trees in our parks or something like that, where ARPA is very restricted. And I guess I don't have a problem with using it from ARPA.
I would agree with that. I think ARPA probably makes good sense, if for no other reason than the expiration dates. I do want to note, Schumacher being a county park. Yes, it's owned, maintained, run by the county, all that sort of stuff, but really it is such a part of the Waunakee area. Supporting it is really a no-brainer for me.
Well, I'll make the motion, but, go
Can I
ahead.
just ask one question? I think fair for the board to know. If the Friends Group doesn't get a single additional dollar towards the project, what is your solution?
Do you want me to take this or you want to take it? Okay, we can tag team it. So that is something obviously we've had to think about, because we started construction when we were at 75%, which is standard for most capital projects, and we're at 86% now. So if we were to not receive another single dollar, this would come out of the remaining money for this year. So that would go toward next year's programming. So right now we're able to offer a lot of free programming. We partnered with community centers on the north side. We provide wintertime at the farm, springtime at the farm, sunset hikes. We provided, I want to say, about 500 free tickets to families that go to the food pantry or families that use Waunakee Neighborhood Connection and all the north side community centers to come to this year's Heritage Fest. All of these different types of opportunities where we're trying to make things more accessible, do the prairie restoration, basically the things that you love Schumacher Farm for. We would have to cut back on for next year, at least, to kind of do the bare bones in order to use the money we raised with our end of year appeal, our membership drive, and our two big fundraising events this fall to go toward this instead. So obviously we don't want to do that, but we have a backup plan if need be. Okay.
Well, thank you again for the presentation. I echo the sentiments. I think it's a great asset to the community and the people that it brings into town as part of the programming that you offer. I would move to approve. I appreciate, Nyla, your thoughts on ARPA versus unassigned, but I would like the flexibility of having the unassigned for future uses. So I would move to provide $15,000 in funding from our ARPA funds.
I'll second.
All those in favor, I forgot what I'm doing.
Probably discussion.
Any discussion on the motion?
I would just say that I'm supportive as long as chicken wrangling is continued.
Maybe we could increase it.
Maybe we could do something.
Maybe
Yeah.
Name a chicken after Joe. Yeah, exactly.
That's a great fundraising idea.
There you go.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hope to see you this Saturday at Heritage Fest.
Okay, next item, and thanks for having it on the screen because I lost my agenda again, is discussion on proposed development agreement between the Village and Welch Enterprise LLC in tax increment district number 9 for newcomer supply project.
Thanks, Chair Brown. I'll introduce this item. I would like to point out that the owners of Newcomer, Mike and Sam Welch, are here this evening along with their legal counsel and their excuse me, financial consultant. We do have waiting in the wings our financial consultant, Todd Taves, who is available for questions as well. But in anticipation of the full process for the amendment of TID 9 concluding soon, the Welches have asked for some discussion on the first draft of a development agreement associated with the TIF proposal, or the TIF agreement rather, associated with their project. The materials for this item are found on pages 21 through 57 of your packet. The short version really is that it is a request. It is essentially a loan, as Attorney Proctor noted during the commentary period. The amount would total in the neighborhood of $2 million. The payment of that would be made in annual installments over the first 10 years of the project. The following 20 years, Newcomer would backfill those dollars on an annual basis for a period of 20 years. The current projected closure for TID 9 as of right now is 2033. My understanding, and Todd Taves can jump in here if I'm misspeaking, is that would remain essentially the same. It may be extended a year. Perhaps Todd can elaborate on that a bit, but this would not extend the life of the TID. It should have minimal impact to the projected closure period. So that is it in a nutshell. As I mentioned, the applicant's here with us. I don't know if Kate, if you wish to say anything at this point. Okay.
Thank you. Again, Kate Crowley. I'm with Baker Tilly, financial consultant to Newcomer and Welch Enterprises. I know we were before you about 2 months ago, and we don't want to be too repetitive from that, but also wanted to share some updates on the project and a little bit more insight into the financing for the project and why the need for TIF. We appreciate that tonight's just a discussion of the draft development agreement, and that you'll take this up for consideration at your next meeting along with the amendment of the TID. But Mike Welch and Sam Welch, the owners of Newcomer, wanted to be here to answer any questions and to hear your feedback on the draft development agreement. So we won't be too repetitive, but did want to have Mike and Sam provide a little bit of an update and an overview for anyone watching this meeting who wasn't here in July when we were last here. Mike.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Michael Welch, president of Newcomer Supply. One of the things I wanted to focus on for tonight's presentation is explaining to you a little bit more about what makes Newcomer Supply important to us and what makes Newcomer Supply important to histology. So one thing we didn't talk about before is the science by which we practice, which is histology. We hire histologists, we train them. We also serve histologists as our customers. So when the company was founded, that was our purpose, and we continue to invest in making sure that histology is the most important part of our business, from hiring and training to making sure our customers are getting exactly what they want. One of the important distinctions about what we do is histology is a very manual science diagnostic process. Unlike what's happening a lot across the medical universe is automation. Histology is an old science and it hasn't changed for decades, and we're very happy for that. And we invest a lot in the people we hire to train them, move them up, and hopefully find employment all across the country in diagnostic devices. That's one important part I wanted to get across to you guys today. I wanted to also address a little bit about the nature of how we got to this point. We have owned the lot in Waunakee since 2018. It was always our intent to begin this project in 2019, 2020. When the pandemic hit, we made a very deliberate choice to support our company, support our employees, support our customers by retracting from the plan to build in Waunakee and focus on the challenges that our business was dealing with at that time. On a personal note, Sam and I were also dealing with the health of our mother and wanting to make sure we had the time to take care of that part of our lives. So now we're here today in front of you asking for a loan to help us finance a project that is greatly more expensive than we were expecting it to be due to reasons we've talked about before. So those are the few points I wanted to touch base with you guys tonight. So I'll pass this off to Sam to see if he can bring you any other information.
I'm Sam Welch. I'm the younger brother and the operations manager. So as a reminder, the building's 34,500 square feet. For the building, it's about $16 million in investment. So it's 14.5 in construction costs and 400 about in value, 350 to 400 in land, and approaching and maybe exceeding about $1 million in professional fees. And that's the building itself. That's not increases to salaries as we expand into the building and equipment and the other types of personal property that will have to go into that building. So as Mike has explained, good or bad, we made a decision to delay. In 2021 and 2022 were difficult financial years for building, just because construction materials went up significantly. At the same time, interest rates went up significantly. So we're approaching, even if you were to consider a traditional inflation of construction costs over that same period of time, maybe as much as 20% increase above that. And we're at interest rates that are getting close to almost double what they might have been if we had followed through in 2020. So, and this is our decision and our error to be put into this circumstance that we're now having a building that isn't as affordable as it was before. To your question, sir, about the number of lenders, we didn't talk to 5 or 6, but we did talk to 3. So our primary lender, who we've had business with for over 20 years, was very interested in the project, but even with a TIF incentive has decided to take themselves out of the running to be the financer for this project. We have another bank. I don't want to mention their names because I haven't asked for them permission like we have from one community bank that is positive about the project and would be a potential financier, but they would, like one community bank, only consider it with TIF approval. And one community bank is our financer of the project at the moment. They're the ones who we're likely to move forward with, and they are defined that the project is only available with TIF approval. To a part of the explanation for that is EBITDA, which is the calculation that's very important to the both for company value, but when dealing with very large financial projects like this. We're a healthy company and we're growing. We're doing a lot of things really well, but we're still very small. The scale of this project in comparison to the size of our company is significant. So at $16 million of overall building value, not including property taxes, the increase off of our operational expense right now as a renter, that for our, what would be our current mortgage, or I'm sorry, what would be our future mortgage in this building, plus the utilities and the insurance add-on, again, This is not property taxes. That's probably in the 1.2 to $1.3 million increase. When we add that all at once, starting at the year of occupancy, our EBITDA value goes down, right? What we can book as net profit goes so significantly low that a bank, even if we've shown a great track history of slow and stable growth over a period of time, they feel that they might be at risk. So what the payroll tax, what the TIF application, approval of a TIF application allows us is to take some version of $200,000 off of that. So instead of it being 1.5, it's 1.3. And we've got two banks that would consider us a viable project because we're a company that's been going for 40 years and we've shown significant and stable growth through that period of time. But that is the cleanest way of describing the but-for, is that we're worked with the Village of Waunakee the best we could to try to find a meeting ground in the middle that might work for both parties. And we're just asking for your help. So if you have any other more detailed questions about any of the financing, you can ask me.
Just to wrap it up, I want to reiterate a couple of things that Mike and Sam said and share a little bit of my perspective. My perspective is when I became involved with this project, working with Mike and Sam Welch, was last year when construction costs came in, and Mike and Sam called and said it just doesn't work anymore. Our primary lender is having a tough time with this. What can we do? And the first stop in our minds was not TIF. We've evaluated a lot of financing options, and the last place that we are is here to talk about TIF. You heard the number of lenders that the Welch brothers have talked to. Finally found one, found two that would do this with TIF underwriting. We're also working with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to receive business development tax credits that are also critical to the project and to the underwriting of the project. We're exploring a number of federal tax strategies and tax savings that come along with capital investment that are also critical to making the numbers work on this. So this is a kind of turned into a somewhat complicated financing package necessitated by the increase in construction costs, the increase in interest rates in the years that have passed. And it works. It works with all these pieces that are coming together. The last piece is TIF, and it works with the TIF as we've proposed. And as you heard from Robert and you heard in our last meeting, TIF as proposed is really unique to anything that's been proposed even in the state of Wisconsin. Ellers has not seen this before. Baker Tilly, we do a lot of municipal advising, another arm of our firm. We haven't done this. For a company to repay the TIF is something that none of us have seen, and it is something that we've come to in discussions with the village staff as a proposal as the only means to make this project financially feasible. So we'll be here for your discussion. I'm happy to answer questions now or later, and appreciate you taking the time to discuss this tonight.
Thank you, Kate, Sam, and Mike. Before I open up for discussion for the board, because the agenda item is to review the development agreement, I was going to ask Todd or Brian if there's any additional, or maybe Tim, just anything specifically that you want to highlight or to call out, or any specific feedback that you're looking for or that the applicants are looking for.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is you have the ability to go into closed session tonight too. And there's probably some items that I would like to discuss with you in closed session if you're willing to do it. Now, you also have the ability, then now is the time if you have any questions for the developer to ask questions, because they will not be in closed session with you. And if there's anything that you want to talk about in open session, we're certainly willing to do that. If you get on an item that my thought is that we should discuss it in closed versus open, I'll raise my hand. But I don't want to force you into a closed session right away, but I think that would be staff's hope at some point.
Well, why don't I would tell me if I'm wrong, or this is to have the questions that the board may have of the applicant. So that way, if we go into closed session, since we're not likely taking any action tonight, that we can just do that at the end.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So with that, open it up for comments or questions of the board.
It was stated that you're trying to get funds from the Wisconsin Economic Development as well as the TIF funding you're asking for from us. What happens if if one of those falls through, if you don't get anything from Wisconsin Economic Development, or you don't receive the TIF through us, then what happens to the project?
If we don't receive TIF approval, then the project will be shuttered. We'll watch grass grow on the lot. So I can't tell you exactly what our next decision would be, but I can tell you that the project, which has been moving along at our investment, at our expense, trying to make it happen, will have to stop. So we're at a point where we have to stop paying for professional fees related to this project because financing will fall through, and we'll just shutter it. Not to say that it would completely go away, but we would, Mike and I would have to find another option to solve our current facility problems.
Thank you.
Okay.
Comments, questions? No? Robert?
I have a few. So I want to, while we're still in open session, I'm going to ask this question, and I think we can answer it in open session, but just so that we're aware of what we're dealing with here, the offer is in essence, I'm a banker, so I think about these in banking terms. It's a 30-year mortgage, 10 years, you're drawing like a construction loan, 200,000 every year. And you're not, since it's 0% interest, you're not paying any interest. It's basically like a banker's nightmare, an interest only that has no interest. And then the repayment period would be years 11 through 30. And there's, I assume, no sort of prepayment issues in the agreement. Like there's not like a, if you prepay it faster than the full 30 years, that like it somehow benefits your company, or is it just a neutral?
I'll just stay over here. Yeah, what you said is correct. With the one clarification I would provide to it is that the first 10 years, the drawing of the funds is limited to the tax increment generated by Welch's investment in the property.
With the exception of year one though, right? Because we're giving, I thought I heard something about 200,000 up front from the TIF. Did I mishear that? I apologize if I did.
Nope. Yeah, it would just be limited to, it'd be limited to the property tax generated in every year up until 10 years or the closure.
So you're motivated to get construction up as soon as possible in order to create increment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then the prepayment, I don't think that's.
There's no
there's no
okay.
benefit to that.
All right. I mean, we'd like it if it's paid back faster. That's why I just wanted to make sure there wasn't like we somehow would have some sort of discount. I guess when I hear about the financing questions, again, I'm a little concerned about it sounds like this would have been a great opportunity for somebody to do a participation loan with OCB, I guess, if there was concerns about them putting too many of their apples in one basket. So, because that's what it sounds like. They don't like taking on additional risk. And unfortunately, I'm cursed. I know what a beta is. So I get it. And I wish OCB was here because I probably would have asked them some additional questions. I guess what really sticks for me on this is that, a $2 million loan payable after 30 years is not worth $2 million. And I get that there is the uniqueness argument. In fact, that was the other question that I wanted to get to, is the uniqueness of this. And Todd Tavers is on the line. Yes. I guess I want to ask just a flat question here, because it's never good to be first to do something. You're the nail that sticks out, and you're going to get hammered if you do that. So can Todd Tavers maybe put my mind at ease here a little bit on, what's the concern of being the first municipality in the state to do a TIF this way?
Well, first of all, we've done a TIF loan because Cohen Esri is going to ultimately pay us money back. So be clear, we've already done this before.
Okay, so everybody's been saying this is unique. This is first. It's not.
Maybe Waunakee is unique, but now it's not a full payback. It's a partial payback, if I remember correctly.
And
And I know
Sorry. Whoa. What's going on?
now, and keep in mind, that was a TIF that was based on the affordable housing account that we have. So not what I would call a development incentive. But I agree that it's unique. Usually what happens is if you approve a development incentive payment, none of the money comes back. So I don't really think that there would be a downside to this, because the flip side is just you give it away.
Okay, but I'm hearing that, again, I'm going to go back because I remember distinctly Todd Tabor saying this, that, this is the first he had seen this way in the state. And again, that was said tonight, this is
Maybe from a development incentive as opposed to the affordable
right.
housing.
So I guess what I would like to know is from the people who do this for a living and a lot better than me is, can they opine on why we would be the first? And the TIF has been around for years. Why did we suddenly invent something that didn't exist?
Well, Robert, if I might add, in the Community Development Authority meeting, the comment was, if I recall, they offered to repay this, where that type of request is somewhat unheard of. But if I
think you should ask Todd.
I would rather hear from Todd. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It was the company's representation that they were willing to pay it back. That is not certainly customary or anything that we've seen as a matter of precedent. But I think Brian's point is exactly correct. The difference is getting it back, even though it's at a discounted value versus not getting it back.
Can Ellers make a projection for the municipality as to, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, because if you did, you'd be a very rich individual, but can you maybe tell us what, if there's some sort of standard, amount that Ellers would feel that they're, what $2 million would be worth in 30 years?
I would probably discount that at, something in the range of 3 to 5%. So less than half that.
Less than half of, we would get back in today's money, we get less than $1 million back.
Sure.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Can I ask a question? We've been talking about 10 years, and if I missed something, let me know. But my understanding is that's based on projections of the increment. But theoretically, if the increment that is generated is less than that amount, the payment would be longer than 10 years, because you're asking for basically either $2 million or until the district ends and you get the 2 million. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Sam, Aaron, Joe? No? Okay. Well, thank you again for the presentation and for providing all of the additional background. On the request, I would just like to kind of share some of the comments that I did at the Community Development Authority meeting that haven't been mentioned. I think the project and the nature of the project in and of itself should be discussed. This type of company, a diagnostic equipment, medical device company, for lack of better classification, is in high demand in the Madison region. Obviously, Waunakee has a couple of companies that this will complement in our business park, and they tend to cluster. So I think supporting projects like this is a good thing for the community in general, and understanding what has happened with construction costs and with financing options in the recent years. Appreciate the challenge that you are up against. So thank you all for the additional background and color. Okay, so with that, do I have a motion to go into closed session, or do I?
We just need to read it. And I guess you could do that as part of the motion if you want, but it's on page 2 of your packet.
Does somebody who have it up want to make the motion? It's here.
And it's on the screen.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I move to approve, or the village, I have to read the whole thing there.
I think you just we've already introduced the item number 3. So now I think you just need to read the.
Thank you, Brian. I move to go into closed session as the village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session.
I'll second.
All those, any discussion on the motion?
Has to be a
Well,
roll
It's a
call.
roll call vote.
Okay.
And before you do the roll call, one quick question. So Todd Taves knows you are welcome to allow Todd Taves to be in closed session with you. Is that something you'd like tonight?
Yeah, do I have to amend the motion?
No,
Okay. Yeah.
that's more for Todd's benefit because we have a separate link
Yeah.
that he would then exit and enter into.
Okay, yes, that would be great, Todd, if you could join us.
Okay,
Both
and then
times.
for the public or those watching,
No, I'm
we'll
just
be,
kidding.
we'll be ending the this Zoom meeting and the recording at the conclusion of this agenda item. We do not expect action in open session. We're just receiving direction from the board tonight.
Okay, and do we have discussion before the roll call vote or just the roll call vote?
Theoretically, you can, but.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Carla.
Okay, Nyla Fry,
Aye.
Trisha Brown,
Aye.
Sam Kaufman, Aaron Moran,
Aye.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Aye.
Robert McPherson.
Aye.